It seems like everyone's always trying to figure out the secret to living longer.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, where's that fountain of youth?
Okay.
Right. And you sent me some research
Yeah.
that suggests it might be a lot simpler than we think
Hmm.
and a lot closer. We're diving into a study all about how much longer you could live just by, well, being more physically active.
Right.
And it's called Physical Activity and Life Expectancy, a life table analysis
Yeah.
by Veerman and their team, and it was published just last month in the British Journal of Sports Medicine.
That's the one.
Now, what I found really fascinating about this study is that it uses hard data from accelerometers, not just people saying, oh yeah, I exercise a lot.
Exactly. So they're tracking people's actual movements over a whole week.
Okay, so we're not talking about like those vague estimates people give when you ask about their workout routines.
Right, right.
This is the real deal, like how much are people really moving?
Good.
And that makes the findings even more powerful because we're looking at potentially years added to your life
Yeah.
just by, getting up and moving more.
Absolutely. And the results are, well, pretty astounding, to be honest.
Okay, lay it on me.
The study found that Americans over 40 could live an average of 5.3 years longer.
Whoa, hold on. 5.3 years.
5.3 years, if everyone was as active as the top 25% of the population, that is...
That's like adding a whole extra chapter to your life.
It really is.
Wow. But, I am curious.
Yeah.
How significant is that increase in the grand scheme of things? We always hear about life expectancy going up anyway.
Right.
So is this 5 years really that big of a deal?
Well, it is. While life expectancy has been increasing overall, it's actually plateaued, even declined slightly in recent years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially in the U.S. So finding a way to potentially add over 5 years
Okay.
to the average lifespan is a pretty big deal given those trends.
So it's not just about living longer.
Yeah.
It's about, like, reversing a concerning trend.
Yeah, you could say that.
Now, this study specifically looked at Americans over 40. Why that age group?
The researchers focused on that group because that's when chronic diseases, many of which are linked to inactivity, tend to become more common.
Ah.
So the potential for, living longer through physical activity is
Mhm.
particularly significant for this age group.
So it's about targeting the age group where lifestyle changes can have the biggest impact.
Right, exactly.
Got it. Now, you mentioned earlier that this study used a life table analysis,
Yes.
which sounds very technical.
A little bit, yeah.
Can you break that down for us? Like, what is a life table?
Sure. A life table is basically a statistical tool
Okay.
that researchers can use to project life expectancy based on different factors.
Okay.
In this case, they used it to model how life expectancy would change at different levels of physical activity.
Got it.
There
So
you
they're
go.
not just looking at how long people lived, but they're actually using this data
Right.
to project how long people could live
Exactly.
based on how active they are.
Yes. And it's this approach that lets them make these predictions about adding years to our lives.
Predictions that are pretty mind-blowing.
I'd say so.
Okay, so we've got this like robust methodology
Uh-huh.
and this idea that we could potentially add 5.3 years to the average lifespan
Okay.
just by being more active.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that the most dramatic gains were seen in the least active people.
Oh, yeah.
What did the study find about that group?
For those in the bottom 25% for activity levels,
Okay,
the potential increase in life expectancy was a whopping 10.9 years.
10.9 years.
Yeah.
That's longer than most people spend in college.
It is a long time,
It really makes you think about how we prioritize physical activity in our lives.
doesn't it?
Because someone who's currently pretty inactive could be missing out on a decade or more of life.
It's a sobering thought for sure.
It is, but it's also kind of empowering, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it means there's a huge opportunity for people to take control of their health and
Yeah.
their longevity simply by becoming more active.
Exactly. It's not just about living longer, it's about adding life to those years.
Now, I'm guessing it's not as simple as just saying, okay, everybody, go be more active.
Right. There's more to it.
So what do they find about how much activity is needed to actually achieve these gains?
Well, they translated the differences in activity levels between the groups into minutes of walking per day. And to
Yeah.
jump from the least active group to the most active group,
Yeah,
you'd need to add about 111 minutes of walking to your daily routine.
111 minutes, so almost 2 hours.
Yeah,
That's a pretty big commitment.
it is.
But then again, if we're talking about adding a decade to your life,
Right.
maybe it doesn't seem so daunting.
It's about perspective, isn't it?
It is. But let's be realistic, 111 minutes is a lot, especially if you're starting from zero.
Sure.
Did the study say anything about the benefits of Like smaller increases in activity.
Well, absolutely. Even moving up just one quartile, so going from the least active 25% to the next 25%
Okay.
could still add years to your life.
So you don't have to become like an ultramarathoner overnight to see
Yeah.
results.
Not at all.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
I like that. And what's really great is it doesn't have to be high-intensity exercise.
Right.
The study focused specifically on walking, which is something most people can do.
Yeah, it's very accessible.
That's such a good point because we often think we need to be hitting the gym or doing these crazy workouts to be healthy.
Yeah, yeah.
But this study shows the power of something as simple as walking.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to build movement into our everyday lives.
I love that.
Like taking the stairs instead of the elevator, walking on your lunch break,
Yeah.
parking farther away, all those little things add up.
It's a reminder that every step counts, literally. But I am curious, this study focused on walking.
Yes.
Do we know if other forms of activity, like dancing or swimming, could have similar effects on life expectancy?
That's a great question, and it's one that this particular study didn't directly address.
Oh.
But it definitely opens up some interesting avenues for future research.
So while this study gives us some strong evidence for the benefits of walking, there could be a whole world of, like, life-extending activities out there,
Exactly.
just waiting to be explored.
Precisely. Now, we've talked about these incredible findings, but I think it's important to understand how the researchers actually reached these conclusions.
Okay, yeah, let's peek behind the curtain a bit.
Let's do it.
I'm especially curious about how they tracked people's activity levels so accurately.
Well, they used data from the 2003-2006 NHENES study,
And heen.
which stands for the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey.
Okay, and what is that?
It's a program designed to assess the health and nutritional status of adults and children in the U.S.
Okay.
It's a pretty big and comprehensive data set.
So we're not talking about a small, localized study.
Yeah, no.
This is national data,
Absolutely.
which makes the findings even more relevant to, like, the general population.
Right, exactly. And for this study, they zeroed in on a subset of the NHENES participants who wore accelerometers for a week to track their movements.
So this is objective measurement
Yes.
of their activity levels.
But very precise.
This is like taking the guesswork out of it, right?
Exactly. No relying on people's memories or potential exaggeration.
We're getting the raw data on how much people are actually moving.
Precisely.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
So they took this accelerometer data and combined it with 2017 mortality statistics.
That's right.
And that's how they created the life table,
Yes.
which, as you explained, let them project life expectancy based on different activity levels.
Exactly.
And that's where things get really mind-blowing
It is fascinating.
because they were able to, like, quantify the impact of physical activity on longevity.
Right.
And the fact that they used such a reliable way to measure physical activity
Yeah.
makes these findings even more compelling. So we've got this solid methodology, data from a huge national survey, and these incredible findings about potentially adding years to our lives by being more active.
That's pretty remarkable.
It is. But like with any scientific study, it's important to acknowledge that there are always limitations.
Of course, of course.
What are some things we should keep in mind when interpreting these results?
Well, one thing is that the study only looked at total physical activity, not the type.
Okay.
So we see a clear link between movement and longevity, but it doesn't tell us if certain types of activity, like strength training or swimming, might be even better than walking.
Interesting. So walking is good,
It is.
but there's still a lot we don't know about the specifics of different forms of exercise.
Absolutely. This study gives us valuable insights, but it also raises new questions.
It's like we've opened one door,
Yeah.
but there are many more to explore.
Exactly. And that's what makes this field of research so exciting.
Now, you also mentioned earlier that this was an observational study. Does that mean we can't definitively say that walking causes people to live longer?
Well, that's right. Observational studies can only show us a correlation between things, not necessarily causation.
So there could be other factors at play.
There could be.
It's a good reminder that correlation doesn't automatically equal causation.
Exactly.
But even with that caveat, the correlation they found is pretty strong, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. They did adjust for potential confounding factors like age, sex, BMI, smoking status, things like that,
Okay.
which helps strengthen the link they observed.
And the size of those potential lifespan gains, especially for those who are the least active.
It's hard to ignore.
It really is. Okay, so we've talked about the limitations,
Yeah.
But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
This study shows some pretty remarkable stuff.
It does.
I mean, an average increase of 5.3 years of life just from being more active.
It's amazing.
And for those who are the least active right now, it's almost 11 years.
That's right.
That's like an extra decade added to your life.
It really highlights the power of lifestyle changes,
It does.
especially physical activity.
Now, before we get too carried away with all this talk of extra years,
Yeah.
let's talk about one of the most fascinating parts of this study. How much lifespan you gain for each hour of walking.
That's where it gets really interesting.
I know, I'm excited to dig into the numbers
Okay, let's do it.
and find out just how much each step we take could be adding to our lives.
All right, let's dive in.
So before the break, we were talking about the limitations of this study.
Right.
And one thing that stood out to me was that it only focused on total physical activity,
Yes.
not the type of activity.
Uh-huh.
Does that mean we can't really say anything about whether, weightlifting or swimming might be even more beneficial than walking?
That's a great point. And while the study doesn't give us data on different activity types,
Okay.
I think it's important to remember that walking is, just one piece of the puzzle
Right.
when it comes to overall health and well-being. It's amazing for your heart. But other activities that focus on strength, flexibility, balance, those are crucial for aging well, too.
So this study is a fantastic starting point, giving us strong evidence for walking.
It is.
But it's not the whole story.
Right.
Like, there's still so much to learn about how different kinds of movement can help us live longer, healthier lives.
Exactly. And that's what makes this area of research so exciting.
Now, another limitation you mentioned was that this study was observational.
Yes.
So does that mean we can't definitively say that walking actually causes people to live longer?
That's right. Observational studies like this can only show a correlation between two things.
Okay,
In this case, physical activity and lifespan.
got it.
It's possible there are other factors we haven't even thought of.
Right, other variables we haven't accounted for.
Exactly.
But just because two things are correlated doesn't mean one causes the other.
Exactly.
But, I mean, the correlation they found here is pretty compelling, right?
Oh, absolutely. The researchers were very thorough. They adjusted for a lot of potential confounding factors.
Like what?
Like age, sex, BMI, smoking status.
Yep.
All those things can influence lifespan.
Right.
And even after accounting for those, the link between activity and lifespan was still really strong.
And the potential gains they're talking about, especially for the least active folks.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore that.
It is. Now, I remember you mentioning reverse causation.
Yes.
Can you explain what that means in this context?
So reverse causation is basically the possibility that the relationship we see
Okay.
between two things is actually the opposite of what we think.
Interesting.
So in this study, it's possible that people who already have some health issues
Okay.
might be less active as a result,
Ah, I see.
which could make it seem like inactivity is causing their shorter lifespan
Yeah.
when it's actually the underlying health problems that are driving both.
So it's like a chicken or the egg situation. It's a good point because it reminds us that things aren't always as simple as they might seem at first glance.
That's right.
But did the researchers try to address this potential issue in their study?
They did. They acknowledged the possibility of reverse causation.
Okay.
And they tried to minimize its impact by adjusting for a range of health-related factors in their analysis.
So they basically tried to rule out any alternative explanations.
Exactly. It's impossible to completely eliminate the possibility of reverse causation.
Right.
But they did a good job of trying to mitigate its influence.
That definitely makes me feel more confident in their findings.
Good.
Okay, so we've talked about the limitations.
Yep.
But let's not lose sight of the main takeaway here.
The big picture.
This study shows some pretty incredible things.
It really does.
I mean, an average increase of 5.3 years of life just from being more active.
It's pretty remarkable.
It is. And almost 11 years for the least active folks.
That's huge.
It really makes you think about the power we have to impact our own health and longevity.
It does. It underscores the need for, public health initiatives to encourage people to be more active.
Right, like making it easier for people to walk and bike.
Exactly. Things like walkable neighborhoods, access to parks and recreation facilities.
Workplace wellness programs, all that stuff.
Absolutely. It's about creating environments where movement is just part of everyday life.
I love that idea. And it's never too late to start, right?
Never too late.
This study shows that even small increases in activity can make a difference.
For sure.
And the benefits go way beyond just losing weight or being physically fit.
It's about adding years to your life.
And living those years to the fullest.
Exactly.
It's about investing in your future self.
It is.
And it doesn't have to be about those crazy, intense workouts.
Right.
This study shows that just moving more in any way that feels good for you can make a difference.
Absolutely. Walking is a great place to start. It's low impact. It's accessible.
Yeah.
Most people can do it.
And you can make it part of your daily routine.
Exactly. Walk while you talk on the phone. Listen to a podcast.
Walk with friends. Explore your neighborhood.
So many possibilities.
The key is to make it a habit.
Consistency is key.
And remember, it's about progress, not perfection.
Start small. Be patient.
You got this.
You do.
And who knows, those extra steps you take today might just be the key to a longer, healthier, happier future.
It's an investment worth making.
It really is. Now, before we get too carried away with dreams of a future filled with endless walks,
Right.
let's dive into one of the most interesting parts of this study. How much lifespan you gain for each hour of walking.
Okay, let's crunch some numbers.
I am so ready to hear this.
Let's see how those extra steps translate into real measurable benefits.
Let's do it. Okay, let's talk about those lifespan gains per hour of walking.
All right, let's get into it.
I'm ready to be amazed.
I think you will be.
Now, before we jump into the numbers, can you remind us about those activity quartiles again?
Sure. So, remember, the researchers divided everyone into 4 groups based on how active they were.
Right.
Q1 is the least active, 25% of the population.
Okay.
Q2 is the next 25%, and so on, up to Q4, the most active group.
Got it. So we're basically comparing couch potatoes to, like, fitness fanatics.
Pretty much.
What happens when we look at the differences in lifespan between these groups?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
For the least active folks, that Q1 group,
Okay.
just moving up to Q2, which the study says means adding about 28.5 minutes of walking a day,
Okay.
could mean gaining an average of 6.3 hours of life expectancy for every hour of walking.
Hold on. Did you say 6.3 hours?
6.3 hours for every hour of walking.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You're saying that if someone's really inactive right now
Uh-huh.
and they start walking just under 30 minutes each day,
Yeah.
they could gain over 6 hours of life expectancy for each of those walking hours.
That's what the study suggests.
That's incredible. Like, are we bending time here or what?
It really highlights how even small changes can have a big impact.
It's like you're getting bonus time.
You could say that.
Okay, but what happens as you move up to those higher quartiles? Like, if you're already pretty active,
Yeah.
do you still get those amazing gains?
The gains per hour do decrease as you move up,
Okay.
which makes sense. If you're already moving a lot, adding more walking won't have as dramatic an effect,
That's right.
but the gains are still significant.
So those extra steps are still worthwhile.
Definitely. For example, going from Q2 to Q3, which is adding another 28 minutes of walking daily,
Okay.
could give you an extra 2.5 hours of life expectancy for each hour you walk.
So even if you're already hitting your step goals, those extra steps are still adding time.
Exactly. It's not as big of a jump as those initial gains,
Yeah,
but still a pretty incredible return on your effort.
it is. This is all so fascinating, but it also makes me wonder about other types of activities.
Like what?
Well, the study focused on walking,
Right?
but what about swimming, dancing, weightlifting? Could those things have similar or even bigger benefits for longevity?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, the study doesn't give us those answers.
Okay.
It's a fantastic starting point, but there's so much more to learn about how different kinds of movement affect lifespan.
So while walking is clearly good,
For sure.
there could be a whole world of other activities out there
Yeah.
that could help us live even longer.
Exactly.
This study gives us a glimpse of what's possible,
Uh-huh.
but there's still a lot to explore.
Absolutely. And that's the exciting part. There's so much more to discover.
It's like we've been given a taste of something amazing,
Yeah.
but we haven't even seen the whole menu yet.
And that's a call to action for researchers.
Right, we need more studies.
Yes.
Mhm.
To really understand how different types of movement.
Different intensities, durations,
I love it.
how they all work together to impact how long we live.
They could completely change how we approach health and aging.
It's like there's this secret code, and if we can crack it,
Yeah.
we could unlock the secrets to a longer, healthier life.
That's a great way to put it.
And even without all the answers, I think this study offers us a really powerful message.
What's that?
Our bodies were made to move. And movement isn't just about fitness or weight loss.
Right.
It's about adding years to our lives.
And living those years to the fullest.
It's about finding joy in movement, whatever that looks like for you.
Absolutely. Walking, dancing, swimming, gardening, anything that gets you moving.
The important thing is to find what you love and make it part of your life.
Couldn't agree more.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into physical activity and longevity,
Yeah.
I want you to remember this.
Okay.
The next time you go for a walk
Uh-huh.
or hit the dance floor
Yeah.
or even just take the stairs,
Right.
remember that you're not just moving your body.
No.
You're adding precious moments to your life.
Embrace movement in all its forms.
It really is the key to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I